Welcome to Discourse. I'm Susil Pandey. United Nations Development Programme (UNDP) is the UN's global development network. It has been working in development fields in Nepal for a long time. Now it has been supporting the country achieve sustainable development goals by 2030. SDGs aim at eradicating poverty, including other ambitious goals within a decade and half year of time. However, Nepal has been facing multi-dimensional crisis from 2015 devastating earthquake to recent prolonged political impasse and board points blockade. In this context, I am going to talk with UNDP Nepal Country Director Mr. Reno Mayer on how Nepal can achieve SDGs despite its many challenges. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sushil.
UNDP has been working in Nepal for a long time. Now, in what sectors is it mainly focusing?
Well, in UNDP we've been here since 1963, so indeed it's a very long time. And the main message of UNDP is the promotion of what we call sustainable human development. So contrary to other agencies, we're not a specialized agency of the UN. We focus on building the capacity of many actors in Nepal to promote the development of the country.
Mainly you are focusing now sustainable development goals?
So the SDGs is this new development framework that was adopted in September at the General Assembly of the UN, and it is a very ambitious but yet very important roadmap for all the member states of the UN to achieve human development. So they are 17 goals, 169 targets, so you can imagine the ambition. And they come after 15 years of what we called the Millennium Development Goals, which were already a set of development objectives, 8 of them, that were adopted in the year 2000 at the beginning of the new century. And those MDGs, Nepal did very good at achieving most of them. Given the success of this approach to get all the countries in the world behind a same agenda for development, the member states decided to kind of raise the bar. And from 8 goals, we went to 17 goals. And the most important ones now are the difference between, if you wish, the MDGs and the SDGs is the level of ambition. The MDGs,
which one is more ambitious?
Well, the MDGs were 8 goals that it would have been very difficult for any country to be against, because they were mostly about social issues, about education, about health, about the promotion of women, the protection of children. So they were already difficult to achieve, but there was no debate about their importance. Whereas the Sustainable Development Goals, we've kept the same spirit of social issues, but we've added a lot of more sensitive and complex political issues.
For example?
For example, peace, human rights, good governance, but also more technical ones like climate change, which is of course very relevant for a country like Nepal.
It means SDGs are more ambitious than MDGs?
Absolutely. They're more ambitious both in numbers, but also in the content of what they try to achieve.
Then what do they mean for Nepal especially, SDGs mean?
I think for a country like Nepal, and for many countries that are in the development process, it's an excellent roadmap. It's an opportunity to rally all the stakeholders who are involved in development. So it is not only the responsibility of the government, but it's really the country that has to achieve the SDGs. Meaning that what we need is a partnership between civil society, the government, at national, at local level, the private sector, all the actors that contribute one way or another to making the country better for its citizens. And of course the impulse is going to come from the government, but the rallying aspect of the SDGs is very important. Now, the SDGs can be adapted, and I think this will be one of the key criteria or the key conditions for their success. They need to be adapted to the local reality.
One of the goals of SDGs is ending poverty in 2030. Yeah.
It is indeed. It's the first goal of the SDGs, and it was a very nice continuum of the first Millennium Development Goals. The first MDG was halving poverty between 2000 and 2015, and Nepal achieved it. in 1996, the poverty level in Nepal was about 43% of the total population. And by 2015, it went down at an estimated 23%. So as you can see, statistically, it was more than halved. So this is already a very good indicator that despite being ambitious, it is possible. Now, ending poverty by 2030 is another challenge, and we know that the closer we get to no poverty, the more difficult it is to reach out to the poorest of the poor.
Now we are running in 2016, and we have aim to end poverty 2030. Okay? We have limited time, but like Nepal, can the country like Nepal achieve such kind of ambitious goal?
I think so. I mean, obviously, it requires a lot of political will and a prioritization, of what the country wants to achieve. Now, the challenges are many in a country like Nepal because it has a lot of vulnerabilities, right? But I think with a good set of policies, with also some, obviously some support and some mobilization of all the key actors, I do believe that it is realistic and possible.
You have said that political will is one of the most important factors to achieve such kind of goal. Do you find such kind of political goal in Nepal? Political will to achieve such kind of goal?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Nepal, without any hesitation, adopted with all the other member states the goals. So there was already from the very beginning a strong commitment. We have seen with, for example, the current National Planning Commission, a very strong commitment of making the plans of Nepal, the development plans, what we call SDG based, meaning that they are going to integrate the objective of the SDGs in the plan for Nepal. Now we need to bring this also at the local level, and we need to mobilize all the actors around the SDGs. And this is why I'm very grateful that you are welcoming me on your show, so that we can talk about the SDGs and bring it to the information of the population at large.
Yeah. What about other factors that may hinder Nepal to achieve such kind of goals?
Well, as I said earlier, Nepal unfortunately faces several vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Of course, we all remember the tragic events of last year with the two earthquakes.
I'd like to enlist them. For example, now Nepal is facing a kind of Indian blockade, okay? And it has already suffered a major earthquake.
Indeed, indeed. And all those are challenges that complicate and make the ambitious goals of the SDGs more challenging. But again, it's all about learning lessons from this. And I think instead of focusing on the vulnerabilities, what we should all try to aim at is to build what we call the resilience of the country. Meaning, how can we ensure that we build Nepal, which is more capable of resisting to shocks? It can be natural disasters like the earthquakes, but it can also mean making the economy more resilient to shocks from the outside. You've talked about the obstructions on the border, for example, after the promulgation of the Constitution. We have seen a very severe economic impact with the shortage of fuel, of commodities. I think the FNCCI has stated that 400,000 jobs had been lost in the Terai only. So we can imagine the difficulties, and it is very expected now that...
Are you saying that despite that difficulties we can achieve the goal, or we have to stop such kind of...
Oh, absolutely. This is why the time frame for the goal is not 1 or 2 years, it is 15 years. Now, the history of Nepal has shown that the country goes into transitions, political transitions, economic transitions, but always what I find very impressive in Nepal is how the people of Nepal are very resilient and very committed and usually very optimistic. They want to go forward. Right? So I really believe and that the current difficulties that we are encountering now will end hopefully very soon, and that the government, together with all the other actors in society, can really put the country back on track. And now we have with the SDGs an objective to achieve, and this is what we will all, I think, move towards.
Political will is one of the most important factors, as you have also told. But so far as Nepal is concerned now, the political will is very low, because Nepal is witnessing a prolonged kind of agitation in its southern plains.
Well, clearly 2015 has been a difficult year, right? I mean, the terrible news and the tragedy of the earthquake, we were I think everybody was happy with the promulgation of the Constitution, which was long awaited. Unfortunately, we have seen that if the political parties were able to reach a consensus during the first few weeks after the promulgation. It has not been the case for the last few months. So it is all about prioritizing, what the country wants to achieve. But I am confident that in the long run, in the 15 years ahead of us, wisdom will prevail, and the objectives of the goals, which are basically to make all the Nepali citizens, urban, rural, poor, richer, live in a better country and with a government that provides them better services.
Nepal has just promulgated a new constitution. And what do you think about this constitution through developmental perspective?
Well, it's always very important for a country to have a solid legal basis, right? Because it reunites all the citizens behind it. Now, UNDP has actually been very much involved in the constitution process, not in the content of the constitution, because this is for the Nepali people to decide for themselves, but UNDP has provided technical assistance for the process, right, ensuring that there would be consultations. Now, again, there's never a perfect setting, right, and I am not aware of any country that has had a constitution and has never amended it, because the world evolves, the needs continue to change, so it is important that those constitution documents be living documents, right? But I think what we will see is if indeed the country now has chosen a federal structure, for Nepal, this will automatically translate into pushing the decision making for a lot of issues more towards the communities. Right? And in a country like Nepal, very diverse, with very different aspirations and different priorities depending on where you live and what you believe in, what your aspirations are, I think it's a model that will, if well implemented, provide an opportunity for all the citizens to become more actors in the decision-making process and not just the receivers of decisions taken from them.
But now, our southern plain, they are agitating against the constitution, and sooner or later Nepal has to resolve such kind of problem, such kind of crisis.
It is very important for development to be able to take place that peace prevail in a country. There's always this interesting relationship between peace and development. You cannot have development without peace, and you need peace for development, right? So the two are absolutely required to progress in any country in the world. So we do hope that the political situation will improve and that the focus, the priorities, the energy of everybody will be dedicated to development. And this is why, in a way, the issue of social cohesion, how do we make a nation stand together and really move forward in the same direction, is so fundamental in Nepal. And this is what the SDG offers. It is a framework that allies everybody around the same objective. So what we have been able to achieve at the international level, all the member states of the UN agreeing to the same set of goals, we need to achieve this inside the country also and make sure that everybody aspires for the same objectives.
Then what should Nepali government to do to go peace and development together and to achieve, as you said, the goals of SDGs?
Well, first of all, again, it is not only for the government to achieve the SDGs. This is a very important message. The SDGs needs the government impulse, but it will not be possible to achieve the goals if they are not owned and if not everybody contributes to their achievement. So the government should really ensure that it creates a platform for all the actors of society and of development to find their role to play on the SDGs. Another big precondition, I would say, to the achievement of the SDGs is that governance be improved. We need a strong and powerful and resilient institutions and government. Right? So the legal framework needs to be very good, very conducive to the SDGs. The budget needs to be prepared and oriented towards the achievement of the SDGs. The next big exercise that Nepal will have to undertake is what we call the costing of the SDGs. Trying to understand and calculate how much money, how much resources will be needed for the achievement of the SDGs. And once we know the price tag of the SDGs, then we can start mobilizing the resources. Domestic resources, but also external resources. Nepal can access a lot of what we call vertical funds. For example, the Green Climate Fund, which was recently established, it has billions of dollars of pledges from the international community, and given Nepal's interaction and how climate change impacts the country, Nepal has a lot of potential of mobilizing resources from those funds.
Nepal is one of the most affected country by the climate change.
Indeed.
Yeah. And do you have any kind of new plan to support, to lessen the effect of climate change?
Yes, this is one of the big areas of work for UNDP. And it looks at the climate change, the changes of the climate and how it impacts human activity. Right? And needless to say, the natural disasters, the landslides, the floods that are affecting Nepal on a regular basis, and that have a very strong negative consequence on the quality of lives of the people, but also on the economic activity in the regions that are affected in the country. And therefore, it is very important to look at mitigating, but also adapting the country to the changes that the climate is going through. You have the beautiful Himalayas, above the country. They have huge glaciers. There's a lot of changes happening right now. So there's, of course, a scientific approach to it. But maybe more important is, after understanding the scientific reality of climate change, the government and all the actors need to think of how it impacts the human activities. Take agriculture, for example, the most important economic activity of the country. A lot of the climate change will have a direct impact on what the agriculture sector is able to produce. So we need to think at the quality of the soils. We need to think of what type of production, of agricultural production we are looking at. And the changes of climate will obviously push some agricultural products out, and we will need to start new production which are more climate resilient. So there is not a single sector in the economy of Nepal that will not be impacted by climate change. So the sooner we integrate this in the planning, the sooner we take this into consideration, the more chances we have of reducing the negative impacts of climate change.
That's why I'm asking question. Nepal is being suffered by climate change, by the earthquake, by the blockage, and the political agitation. These are the major hindrances that block Nepal, that hinder Nepal to go forward to the path of development. And we have a plan, we have ambition, like SDGs.
Absolutely.
Let's hope.
Well, you more than hope. I mean, hope is great, but hope is an attitude. You need to translate that hope into action, right? And this action needs to rely, as we said earlier, on political
Has
will.
Nepal started translating hope into action already?
Yes, I think so. And again, we start seeing already the first measures being taken by the government. The fact that the National Planning Commission has committed to preparing a national development plan, a multi-year plan for Nepal that already integrates the SDGs into it, is a very good signal.
Most of their commitment only remains on the paper.
Well, you are better placed for
National Planning Commission, you have said, most of their commitment remains only on the paper.
Well, we'll have to see. And this is also one aspect of the SDGs, is that if everybody is made aware of what the Sustainable Development Goals are, then it also allows the general public, the citizens, to hold the government accountable for their realization, for their achievement. And so this is why it is extremely important that even the people in remote areas, the rural people in Nepal, know that their government, on behalf of Nepal, has committed itself to deliver and achieve the SDGs by 2030. And therefore it is a moral commitment and something that the public can hold the government accountable. And if, as you say, the NPC would fail, which for the moment they are not, but if they were to fail, I am sure the people would react. And we see in Nepal how mature the individuals in Nepal, the citizens, are to what is important for them. And there are many ways of explaining and for them to express. Now, one has to hope that, again, they adopt peaceful ways of expressing themselves. But this is why elections, for example, are an important tool to provide a voice, a democratic voice, to the people so that they can hold the government accountable to those objectives.
You have also talked about the women empowerment. Yeah.
It's very important, right? Again, I mean, women constitute half of the society. And in a conservative society with a lot of social, cultural traditions that make the identity of Nepal, we need to find ways of also empowering half of the population so that they can also contribute to the achievement of those goals. It can mean political engagement, it can be economic empowerment, give more voice, to the women and make sure that their contribution to society is acknowledged, is respected, and to let more women participate in this big, ambitious objective of achieving the SDGs.
Okay, are there any positive signs women have already engaged?
I believe so. UNDP has been implementing a project of micro-entrepreneurship development for many years with strong financial support from the Government of Australia. And more than 60% of those entrepreneurs are actually women. And I'm always very impressed when I go to some remote areas of Nepal and I meet those women who have benefited, from the support, building their skills, making sure that they know how to do accounting, for example, simple leadership skills, business development skills. Immediately I see women feeling extremely empowered. And I would not be surprised if in the next elections, especially at local level, we see more and more women willing to take a more active role in the political leadership and competing for positions. And I think that will be a very good sign that the gender equality is improving in Nepal and that women really feel empowered and are willing to take responsibility to deliver better services for the population.
But can I say we have big dreams, big ambitions, but we are doing very little thing?
We are, sorry?
We are doing very little and small things to achieve.
Well, it's up to you. It's up to all of us, right? I think it is very important for humanity to have big aspiration, big dreams. We need to know what it is that we want to achieve in our lives. And then it is up to us as individuals to take action. We can take action at local level, in our communities, but we are also all citizens of the world. And therefore we need to feel empowered and fulfill our rights. And in Nepal, it's a powerful democracy. People have rights and they express their feelings. So it is all about the will of the whole country to move forward. And I think, it is very easy to list challenges. I think it is more interesting to really rally around a set of objectives. And even if ambitious as they are, one needs to continue and working hard towards achieving them.
What are other aspects or sectors that SDGs are aimed for?
Well, another very important aspect that is very relevant for Nepal, for example, is the SDG on access to energy, and especially access to renewable energy. Now, the country, we know, has huge assets when it comes to hydropower, for example. And being a landlocked country, right, the Nepal has a bit of a challenge when it comes to economic growth. So accessing energy at an affordable price is very important if we want the economy to really prosper. Right? So I think it is in the government's interest to really ensure that there is a conducive environment for foreign direct investment to come to Nepal and really invest in the hydro sector. There is huge potential. Right? And the situation that we face today, where we have shortages of energy with load shedding in a majority of the day time, is obviously an impediment to economic growth. So this is a sector that I think Nepal should really prioritize, the issue of access to energy.
Then how can UNDP help promote access to energy to Nepali people?
Well, UNDP is not an organization that is looking at large infrastructure projects. We don't have the financial resources to do that. There are other institutions like the Asian Development Bank or the World Bank that can provide loans to the government of Nepal to invest in such large scheme. But what we do in the area of renewable energies especially is more micro-hydro projects at the community level. And there's been a long tradition of UNDP in investing in those micro-hydro stations in the community, in the remote areas, that will forever remain off-grid because of the topography and the difficulty of accessing those areas. And this proves very instrumental, and it empowers the community. Not only it gives them the electricity that they need for domestic but also for economic usage, but it also forced them to organize themselves. So you see at the local level groups of people getting together around a common resource and having to manage it in a sustainable way. And that's also a lesson of governance for those communities.
What are other aspects despite that of SDGs?
Oh, there's 17 goals, so I think all of them are very relevant. There is one goal that looks at marine biodiversity, and obviously this is not going to be a goal of relevance for Nepal being a landlocked country. But another fundamental one, again going back to what we were earlier talking about, social coherence, is the SDG number 10 on reducing inequalities within the country. And we know how diverse the country is. We know also that this diversity leads to inequalities, or inequalities explains the diversity. It goes both ways, right? And we were talking about the success of Nepal in reducing poverty between 2000 and 2015. This should be nuanced because there are still a lot of remote areas, especially towards the far western region, where levels of poverty remain very high. Right? So it is very important that the analysis of poverty reduction is also segregated not only by gender, which we always do, but also by geographic location. And the major efforts should go towards those more remote areas.
Mr. Mayor, we are nearly at the end of the program. Do you want to say something to Nepali people, Nepali leaders, policymakers, or?
Well, I think this. I would like everybody to really appreciate that despite the ambitious of the Sustainable Development Goal, they are very doable. At the beginning of the Millennium Development Goals, everybody thought that these were and would remain dreams that people would aspire. But at the end of 15 years period, we realized that globally most of the goals were achieved. And for UNDP, this comes at a very auspicious time because this year UNDP will celebrate its 50th anniversary. We were created 50 years ago, and we feel that we have a special contribution that we can make to countries like Nepal, not only in promoting and explaining and mobilizing everybody around the SDGs, but in building the capacity of the country, the government, the civil society, the private sector, all the actors together to really make progress on the development path for Nepal so that it will benefit all the Nepali people wherever they live in the country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor,
Thank
for
you,
your
Sushil.
views and time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.